15:59. At 6:47 a.m. on August 23, 2024, Dennis Kruger stood beside a John Deere S790 combine, equipped with a specialty low-cut header in a green lentil field near Havre, Montana. Watching his grain loss monitors show 4.2% seed being left on the ground, while his export contract with an Indian buyer required maximum 2% field loss to meet tight supply commitments. 63 years old, second-generation pulse crop farmer, 2,800 acres under management producing lentils and chickpeas for global markets. The combine's cutting height sensor showed the header running at 3.2 inches above ground, still too high for lentils that pod within 2 inches of soil surface. Standard practice said slow the combine to 2.8 miles per hour and lower the header to 1.5 inches, accepting 30% productivity loss to reduce seed loss. Then his harvest window closed in 9 days before September rains arrived. He had 840 acres of lentils remaining, and running slow meant leaving 180 acres standing when weather hit. $86,400 in crop value lost. Kruger adjusted the header to 2.0 inches and maintained 3.8 miles per hour speed. They'd accept 3% field loss, miss the contract spec by 1 percentage point, and finish harvest before the rains destroyed everything. Montana's pulse crop system operates as America's dominant lentil and chickpea production region. 1.2 million acres producing 340 million pounds annually, supplying 40% of U.S. lentil production and significant chickpea volume for export markets in India, Turkey, and Mediterranean countries demanding specific size grades and quality standards. Every August and September, specialized combines equipped with low-cut headers capable of operating within 1 to 2 inches of ground-level harvest crops that require gentle handling to prevent seed cracking that reduces both germination rates and export value. The harvested pulse crops move through networks of seed cleaning facilities that remove foreign material, sort by size using precision screens, and grade by color using optical sensors before shipping via Burlington Northern Rail to Pacific Northwest ports, where 80% of Montana's lentil production loads onto container ships bound for international destinations. This is agriculture serving global food systems, where harvest precision determines export acceptability. Size specifications measure to millimeter tolerances. Varies, and market access depends on meeting standards developed for cuisines 8,000 miles distant. Dennis Kruger had farmed pulse crops for 35 years, transitioning from wheat monoculture in 1989 when agronomists promoting crop rotation showed that lentils and chickpeas broke disease cycles, fixed atmospheric nitrogen-reducing fertilizer costs, and generated premium prices compensating for lower yields. His father had raised wheat exclusively across 1,200 acres from 1962 through his retirement in 1988, averaging 35 bushels per acre and earning modest returns. Kruger expanded to 2,800 acres by 2010, rotating wheat, lentils, and chickpeas in 3-year cycles that improved soil health while capturing export market premiums. As green lentils brought 42 cents per pound versus wheat at 18 cents per pound. But lentils yielded only 1,200 pounds per acre versus wheat's 2,100 pounds. The math favored pulse crops. $504 per acre for lentils versus $378 for wheat. But pulse crop success required harvest precision. Wheat farming never demanded. The John Deere S790 Kruger operated cost $485,000 new in 2019, including the $35,000 specialty header designed for low-cut pulse crop harvest. The header spanned 30 feet with flexible cutter bar sections that followed ground contours, maintaining consistent 1.5 to 2.0 inch cutting height across uneven terrain where conventional rigid headers would scalp high spots or dig into low areas. Retractable fingers gently lifted lodged stems while sickle blades cut cleanly without pulling plants. And the combine's threshing system operated at reduced cylinder speeds, 450 revolutions per minute versus the 900 revolutions per minute used for wheat, to separate seeds from pods without cracking fragile lentil and chickpea seeds. Cracked seeds lost 40 to 60% of export value because international buyers purchased pulse crops for whole seed applications in traditional dishes where split seeds were unacceptable. The equipment was engineered for gentleness. The harvest window was unforgiving. The economics required export market access to justify production. At domestic prices of 28 cents per pound for green lentils, each acre yielding 1,200 pounds generated $336 in gross revenue. But export contracts for premium-grade lentils meeting Indian market specifications paid 42 cents per pound, $504 per acre. Seed costs ran $65 per acre for certified disease-free lentil varieties, or fertilizer added minimal cost, $35 per acre for phosphorus and potassium, only since lentils fix their own nitrogen through rhizobial bacteria in root nodules. Herbicides, $48 per acre. Harvest costs, including specialized equipment and gentle handling, $88 per acre. Cleaning and processing to export grade, $42 per acre. Transportation to Pacific Northwest ports, $38 per acre. Total costs, $316 per acre against $504 export revenue. That left $188 profit per acre. But if field loss exceeded 2% or seed damage exceeded 5%, the crop graded as domestic feed quality at 28 cents per pound, and profit collapsed to $20 per acre. The $168 difference between export grade and domestic grade determined whether pulse crop farming generated acceptable returns or became economically pointless. At 9:20 a.m., Kruger had harvested 68 acres, and the grain loss monitor showed 3.1% field loss. Better than the early morning 4.2%, but still above the 2% export specification. His grain sample showed 3.8% cracked seeds, within the 5% tolerance. The quality was acceptable. The field loss remained problematic. He called his agronomist, Peterson, who'd worked with Montana pulse crop growers for 20 years developing harvest protocols. "Dennis, you're trading field loss against harvest completion. If you slow down and lower the header, you'll hit 1.8% field loss, but you won't finish before the rains." That's my calculation. 3% field loss costs me 36 pounds per acre, times 2,800 acres, times 42 cents per pound. That's $42,336 in lost revenue. But leaving 180 acres standing costs $90,720. The math favors accepting higher field loss. Some more. Except your export buyer might reject the whole shipment if they audit your production practices and find you exceeded loss specifications. This was the tension in export-dependent agriculture. Growers optimized for economic survival. Buyers demanded specification compliance regardless of circumstances, and the disconnect created continuous conflict where farmers absorbed all risk. By 2:40 p.m., the operation had covered 180 acres. Kruger's grain cart operator radioed, "Dennis, we've got a problem. The auger just cracked. We're looking at 4 to 6 hours for repair." The grain cart, a specialized trailer that received lentils from the combine and transferred them to trucks, was essential. Without it, the combine's 300-bushel tank would fill in 40 minutes, while requiring direct unload to trucks, which meant stopping harvest every 40 minutes while trucks positioned and loaded. The productivity would drop 60%. Kruger checked his equipment inventory. He had one backup grain cart, older and slower, but functional. He called his son Travis to bring it from the shop. Travis arrived at 3:50 p.m. with the backup cart. 28 years old, holding an agricultural business degree from Montana State, he'd worked the farm for 6 years, while also operating a seed cleaning business that processed pulse crops for 15 neighboring farmers. The cleaning business generated $180,000 annually in revenue, with 40% margins. Better returns than farming with zero weather risk. Travis understood agriculture's future was in service businesses supporting production rather than production itself. Dad, at some point we need to talk about succession. I'll run the cleaning facility. I'm not interested in farming 2,800 acres with margins this thin and export markets this volatile. We'll talk after harvest. They both knew the conversation's outcome. The farm would either sell to a larger operation or Kruger would lease the ground to neighbors, while Travis focused on the cleaning business. Fourth-generation farming wasn't happening. The economics didn't support it. By August 28th, Kruger had harvested 680 acres of lentils. The field loss had stabilized at 2.9%, still above specification, but manageable. His export buyer sent a quality inspector to audit the harvest operation on August 29th. The inspector, a representative from the Indian Importing Company, sampled grain from trucks, measured moisture, 8.2%, acceptable. They tested for cracked seeds, 4.1%, acceptable, and requested field loss data. Kruger provided the combine monitor reports showing 2.9% average loss. Mr. Kruger, our purchase contract specified maximum 2.0% field loss. You're at 2.9%. This exceeds our tolerance. The harvest window and weather conditions forced the decision. We're completing harvest before rains arrive versus optimizing for zero field loss and losing 180 acres entirely. I understand your situation, but our buyers in India are purchasing based on contracted volumes. If your yields are 2.9% lower than projected due to field loss, we're short on our commitments to downstream customers. That creates problems. The inspector paused, reviewed his notes, made a call to his company's U.S. office, returned with a decision. We'll accept this shipment at a 3-cent per pound reduction. And that's 39 cents instead of 42 cents. But future contracts will require documented field loss below 2% or will source from Canadian suppliers who meet specifications. The price reduction cost Kruger $36 per acre across 2,800 acres. $100,800 in lost revenue for the season. His profit margin dropped from $188 per acre to $152 per acre, a 19% reduction. The operation remained profitable, barely. But the message was clear. Export markets demanded precision. Montana farmers struggled to deliver under weather and timing pressures. The September rains arrived September 5th, 3 days after Kruger completed his lentil harvest. He'd finished with 1 day to spare. The remaining 840 acres of chickpeas, which matured later than lentils, got rained on while standing. The moisture delayed harvest by 6 days. When he finally cut the chickpeas, September 11th to 14th, the quality had degraded from weather exposure. Seed coat discoloration affected 8% of crop, above the 5% tolerance for export grade. The entire chickpea harvest, 1.68 million pounds, graded as domestic feed at 24 cents per pound instead of export quality at 38 cents per pound. Revenue loss, $235,200. His chickpea operation went from projected $104,000 profit to $131,200 loss. Dennis Kruger compiled final numbers for 2024 on September 20th. Lentils, $1,007,200 revenue after export price reduction, $885,600 in costs, $121,600 profit. Chickpeas, $403,200 revenue at domestic feed price, $534,400 in costs, $131,200 loss. Combined net, $9,600 a loss for the year. His first unprofitable season in 15 years, when the export market penalties and weather timing had destroyed what should have been a $292,800 profit year. He met with Travis on September 25th to discuss succession. Travis presented his proposal. He'd take over the seed cleaning facility as an independent business, lease 400 acres from his father to maintain minimal farming operations for raw material supply. And Dennis would lease the remaining 2,400 acres to neighboring operators while drawing lease income. The family farming would effectively end, replaced by a service business model that generated income from other farmers' production risks. Travis, your grandfather cleared this land in 1962. He raised wheat through droughts, price collapses, and equipment failures. I diversified into pulse crops, built export relationships, survived 35 years. And now we're exiting because we can't hit 2% field loss targets consistently enough for Indian buyers. Dad, it's not about the target. It's about the risk allocation. Export buyers demand precision, but pay premiums too small to justify the equipment investment and expertise required. Canadian farms running 15,000 acres can absorb the occasional penalty. We can't. The scale economics favor consolidation, and the service businesses supporting agriculture are more profitable than farming itself. Kruger understood. He'd watched Montana's agricultural transformation, farm counts declining from 24,000 in 1980 to 14,000 in 2024, average farm size increasing from 1,800 acres to 4,200 acres, and service businesses capturing larger portions of agricultural value chains. His son was making the rational choice. Dennis Kruger leased 2,400 acres to neighboring operations in spring 2025, retained 400 acres for personal farming, and transferred the seed cleaning facility to Travis's ownership. The cleaning business thrived, processing 12 million pounds of pulse crops annually for 22 client farms, generating $520,000 in revenue with $208,000 in profit. Kruger continued farming his 400 acres through 2027, then retired fully. Travis's cleaning facility continues operating, now processing 18 million pounds annually for 30-plus farms across north-central Montana. Montana's 1.2 million acres continue producing 340 million pounds of lentils and chickpeas annually, supplying 40% of U.S. production, shipping 80% to export markets in India, Turkey, and Mediterranean countries requiring millimeter-precise size grades and sub-2% field loss tolerances. The harvest happens every August and September, executed by larger consolidated operations with equipment redundancy small family farms cannot maintain. The seed cleaning facilities process the crop regardless of who grows it. The export containers load at Pacific Northwest ports regardless of which farms produce the seeds. The system functions. The families transition to supporting services. The pulse crops flow to global markets developed by farmers no longer farming. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these histories of American agriculture's transformation. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and whether you understand the export market pressures reshaping specialty crop farming. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.